Hi friends and book lovers, welcome back. Today's video is about the 11 books that I read in March, which compared to February's measly 4 read books, it is quite incredible that I was even able to read more than 4. I am shocked at myself, but so many of these were so good. We had some rereads, we had some new reads, we had some new favorites. Overall in March, I had a really good reading month, so let's dive right in. So I'm gonna start off with the last 2 books of the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. We have the second one, which is Siege and Storm, and the third one, which is Ruin and Rising. Now, for Siege and Storm, I did not love this book, unfortunately. It was really drawn out. There were some really weird love triangles. There were some really slow moments that I did not appreciate. And I felt like the Darkling was missing for a lot of it. And that felt really strange to me. And then I know that the ending went out with a bang, which was great, but I didn't love where the characters went geographically. So that wasn't so great. But I got through it. And that helped me get to Ruin and Rising. And let me tell you, this book was miles ahead of this one. I loved Ruin and Rising. It was so well paced, so much happened. The characters did a lot, the characters grew, you realized things. I don't know, everything about this, I loved it. It was so good. I didn't love the way that it ended. I felt like there wasn't enough high stakes, but again, it is YA fantasy, and YA fantasy doesn't tend to have super high stakes in it. It tends to play it on the safe side, no broken hearts. So this was a cute ending, but not the one that I wanted to see, or not the one that I felt would have been appropriate for the intensity of the story. So I still had a great time. It was still a 4-star read. I think this one unfortunately was more of a 2-star read, but this one was a 4-star read like Shadow and Bone, and it was really good. It was really interesting, and I love that we got to see more of the world and that the world opened up for us. As some of you probably know, I love when a story or a series does that, when the world opens up to you. It is just so great. The next book was a book that I read for Break Even Books book tour, and that was Healer's Secrets of the Academy by L.L. Smith. And that was an interesting read. It was an academic, magical, school system read with some really interesting shadow monsters and some really interesting different types of characters and species in the book. I did a review on this, so I will link it up here, or up here I think actually it is, so you guys can check that out if you're interested in it. It's definitely a YA fantasy novel, and it reads on the younger side even though the characters are in their 20s, so just FYI for that. There are also a couple trigger warnings, but nothing too crazy. It's the first in a series. I don't know exactly how long it's going to be, but it is the first in a series, and I think it came out in January. So that was pretty cool. It's cool to read some more self-published works, so that was exciting. The next one that I finished was Black Sun by Rebecca Rowan Horace. This was supposed to be a February read that got pushed into March, but I ended up reading it and I really did enjoy this. I can't remember what I gave it. I think either a 3.5 or 4 stars. It wasn't an absolute favorite because I felt like there was so much more that I wanted out of this novel, like more character explanation, more fable explanation, more of everything. It was really interesting and really intriguing, but I just wanted more. So I'm hoping that the second book, whenever that's able to come out, has more. The world is pretty vast. We got a lot of the world in there and some of the world history, but the world history sounds so interesting that I just want to know more about how this world came to be, more about what these characters are supposed to do, like more about everything. And I'm really hoping that book 2 gives that to us. But overall, definitely a good read, very intriguing, very interesting. There's some twists and turns. There's some things that even in this world you don't even think are gonna happen. They just seem so unbelievable, but they end up happening, and that's really cool. I usually feel like anything can happen in a book, so I'm never too surprised in fantasy books when something fantastical happens. But there are a couple things in this book that I was really surprised that happened, and I was shocked at how they happened, and ooh, that took me by surprise. So I really really enjoyed this one, and I definitely plan on continuing with this series. The next one that I read was Songs of Insurrection by J.C. King, and this was a NetGalley arc that I received for a honest review, and unfortunately, even though I read the entire thing, I was very tempted to DNF it at multiple points. I gave this a 2 stars. I didn't love the way that certain things were done and the normalcy of really abusive and weird situations in the story, especially for the main character who's a 16-year-old girl. I just felt like that is not okay. I definitely think that there are definitely some problematic themes and situations in this book that are kind of romanticized and glorified. I'm okay with problematic issues that are shown truly for what they are, but not when they're romanticized and kind of glorified and shown to be normal. And once I finished reading it, I read some other Goodreads reviews, and it seems like folks also have problems with this particular book, so I won't be continuing on with this series, and unfortunately I don't recommend this book. I just feel like if you are interested in reading it, then you should definitely read some of the Goodreads reviews first and the trigger warnings and some of the problematic themes that are going to be present in this book so that you're aware of what you're getting into. But in the midst of that, I also wanted a comfort read, and because February was such a tough month for me, I ended up just picking up the Court of Wings and Ruin, a Court of Frost and Starlight, and then finishing it off with a Court of Silver Flame. So I'm not going to go too much into these. I think everyone knows about these already. I have multiple videos. I have a vlog on a Court of Silver Flames, and yeah, they're just really popular books, and they've become a recent comfort read of mine, and I just felt like I could use a comfort read at the time, and I read all 3 of these books, and it was wonderful, and I binge read them even though I had already read them. I just needed to binge read them again, I guess, and it was a really successful time. I enjoyed my time back in the world, so that was really awesome. And it was a nice contrast to a disappointing read, so I really enjoyed that I was able to get into that, not get into a slump, and just keep enjoying my reading time. The next book I read was also by the same author, Sarah J. Maas, and I finally read Crescent City 1, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. Now, this book is going to be part of a trilogy, I think, and this is the first one. The second book is supposed to come out in November, but apparently isn't coming out until a year from now, which really upsets me and pretty much every other fan that's waiting for the second one to come out. But I will say, if you want to read this book and you're scared about being book hungover after you read this, I don't think you will be. The first novels of Sarah's series often read like standalones, like they could just end, and of course you want more, but it's not as difficult to wait, I feel, as when you're reading her second or third book and you just need to know what happens next. So I say that you could definitely read this. It wouldn't be too painful to wait for the second book, even though it's going to be about another year, but it does read like a standalone. The story does wrap up in itself for the most part, and then of course threads are still left unwoven for the next few books, so I'm curious to see how this one sets up the second and third book and what's going to happen. I love the main character in this book, Bryce. She's probably among my favorite female characters for Sarah J. Maas, along with Nesta and Aelin and all that. I really do appreciate her a lot as a character, and I feel like a lot of us younger modern women could definitely relate to her. I also feel like for her first like pure adult novel, this was pretty good. I was captivated all the time. I wasn't able to binge this like her other books, but I definitely read it really quickly and got invested in the characters really quickly. So the first twist, which apparently is mentioned in the synopsis, I was in the dark for. I was really upset by it. So upset that I was like, I just want to stop reading. And then one of the next twists that happens like 400 or 500 pages into the book, I think this book is 800 pages, I was also really mad at that character for that twist and that turn. And I was like, how dare you? How could you do that to my girl? Whew. It was a ride. But despite that, it still feels like it could be a decent standalone, but you'll want more. So I don't think it's that bad to read if you want to read it. And not be too scared about when the next book comes out, but again, proceed with caution depending on what kind of a reader you are. But I really enjoyed this. It was 5 stars. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was a really great first novel to a trilogy. I love the world. I love how she's interweaving all of the worlds that she's written into like one big universe. So I'm excited to see crossovers happen and maybe even a crossover book happen at one point. That would be so awesome. Let me know if you guys have read this. I felt like I was the last person on BookTube Earth to read this and I loved it. So yeah. I'm excited to hear everyone else's thoughts on it too. And the last 2 books that I read, which completes my 11 books that I read this month, are another set of really popular books with the sequel coming out really soon. And that is From Blood and Ash and Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. I was really hesitant to get into these. Folks told me that I would probably love them because of Sarah J Maas's writing and her books, and if you like her books, then you like these books. But then I also heard other booktubers that I love talk about these books and say that they're awful, that they're really boring, that they're really slow. So I was really skeptical going into them, but I really enjoyed From Blood and Ash. I have a vlog on both of these, so I'll link that up in the cards. So if you want to check that out, you can check out like my real-time thoughts and my spoiler thoughts on these 2 books. But I will say this one is definitely really enjoyable. It's a good debut to the trilogy and it makes you really intrigued. I fell in love with Hawk wholeheartedly in this book, and Kingdom of Flesh and Fire is my favorite out of the 2 so far. I don't know what Crown of Gilded Bones will do for me, but this one I loved. It's one that I can see myself rereading. It's one that I could get really into. The ending for this one definitely throws me off and I couldn't wait to get to the 3rd one, but the first 3 chapters were already out, so I got to read the first 3 chapters of the 3rd one already, and that did answer a few of my questions, so I feel like the wait is less painful now. But I loved the 2nd book. I love this one so much more. The world opened up more, you got to know more about the magic, there was more about territories beyond the world that was mapped. It was incredible. I really enjoyed it. The one thing I will say is that there are some inner monologuing parts that our main character Poppy does that are very long and drawn out and kind of unnecessary. I don't think we need to know all that detail. I don't think it helps. So those parts can be a little slower, but overall, I really enjoyed this. Again, these are in the fantasy romance genre, just like Sarah J Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses series. They are wonderful and I can't wait for the next one to come out. And it makes me really curious for Jennifer L. Armentrout's self-published work. I think these are actually published with a publisher, but her other books that she's done in the last little while are usually, I think, almost all self-published. So excited to see what else she has for us, and I've gotten a few recommendations from folks that really enjoy her books about what her next best series is after From Blood and Ash. So I'm excited to get into that because that series I believe is self-published, so very excited. So that was the 11 books that I read in the month of March, and I'm surprised at myself. I feel like it makes sense when I look at the stack that, yeah, of course I read 11 books in the month of March. I mean, they were all books that I just wanted to like binge, so I got through them all. I'm hoping that I have as successful of a month in April as I did in March, but we'll see because April is a lot busier for work. Anyways, if you guys have read any of the books that I mentioned or love them or hate them or whatever, leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought of them. Let me know what you're reading in April and what you're excited for next. I will love to know that. If you like this video, please click the like button. That helps support me and my channel. And if you enjoyed this video and you like my other content and you want to see more, please do not hesitate to subscribe because I will be posting more videos.